This video is made for entertainment purposes only. Please invest your own money at your own risk. I am not a financial advisor. Please do your own due diligence or research as I will do mine. This video is not financial advice. What is up, everyone? This is Safe Investor AG, H% Saucy Warrior, and I have a video for you on why I'm buying crypto. We're going to take a not an outside, but a general look on what the economy of the US is looking like. And it is not looking pretty for the long term, but near term, yes. Now, this is one, I'm a huge fan of Clear Value Tax. Give this guy a follow, subscribe, because he gives all stats and then his opinion, but numbers don't lie. I'm a numbers guy. Here we go.
We're covering how in today's video, we are covering how the U.S. national debt is surging to record levels, $34 trillion. So this is like someone that's in deep trouble with credit card debt, and they continue to overspend. They're digging a deeper hole for themselves, and this is clearly going to end very badly. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And I want to give you a status update on the situation. So 100 years ago, the U.S. national debt was $383 billion.
That's crazy.
50 years ago, it grows to about $3 trillion. 20 years ago, it hits $12 trillion. 10 years ago, it spikes up to $23 trillion, and it accelerates. Today, we're at $34 trillion. As you can see from the chart, it's just getting out of control. Now, do you really believe, this is a serious question, do you really believe that there will be no consequences to all of this? In my opinion, I believe that's wishful thinking, but that's just me. Now, I want to answer some basic questions, such as why is the U.S. government in debt? Like, what's going on? So this one's simple. This is very straightforward. The government spends more money than they have coming in. And to make up the difference, they have to borrow that money, and they go deeper into debt. Now, take a look at this. This is coming from RIA. The income of the U.S. government is primarily income taxes, okay? So most of it comes from individual income taxes. The next biggest source is Social Security taxes, and then you have corporate taxes, and you have these insignificant money makers like excise taxes, customs, estate taxes, etc. These are the numbers for December of 2023, so very recent. Total tax income collected, $429 billion. Total expenditures, $559 billion. So the US government overspent by $130 billion. Wonderful. Now you're looking at fiscal year of 2024, which starts in October, and it's another terrible start for the government budgets. December, which we just covered, budget deficit of $130 billion. That's not even bad compared to November. So take a look at November's. Yikes.
First off, if you haven't made money
Stupid commercial.
with AI yet, don't worry.
One
AI
second.
is the biggest.
And I want to be honest with you. I don't want you to be confused about this, because this is not a question about Republicans versus Democrats. It's got nothing to do with that, because both parties overspend and drive us deeper into debt. George Bush overspent and drove us much deeper into debt, Republican. Barack Obama comes along and spends even more money, outdoes Bush, and drives us to record debt levels, so Democrat. Trump comes along, spends even more money than Obama, record debt levels, Republican. Biden comes along, spends even more money than Trump, record debt levels, Democrat. So listen, Congress, I'm talking about the politicians as a whole, just generally speaking, they need to learn how to balance a budget. Listen, I'm a practical person. I understand that the politicians, they have to do their thing. They have to be slimy. They have to cut backdoor deals with their friends, with their family members, with their business partners, with their donors. I understand that, but there just needs to be less of that. Listen, all I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, right now, in this type of situation, with these circumstances, they're really, really pushing their luck. That's just my opinion. Okay, so who does the U.S. government owe all of this money to? So take a look for yourself. Some of the debt is owed to foreign countries, which is written in light blue on the right side. Japan is the biggest holder of U.S. debt, followed by China, the UK, and many others. Here at home, the U.S. government owes the most money to the Federal Reserve. The Fed has been lending a lot of money to the U.S. government over the past few years. And there are mutual funds, pension funds, financial institutions, rich individuals, etc., that the US government owes money to. Now, let me show you why the situation right now is more concerning than ever. So here's the interest expense that the US government is paying. The government borrows money and they need to pay interest on that money. And it's becoming sizable now. So I want you to take a look at this. This is what the budget will look like in 2033. The federal government will spend more money on interest payments than national defense. And that's going to happen well before 2033. That's going to happen in about 5 years. Interest payments, take a look. It's going to be close to what's spent on Medicare. So that's wild, right? But I'll tell you this, that is just one concern, because another concern is that all of this growing debt will cause massive inflation. That's because you have to remember, who is lending the most money to the US government? It's the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve magically creates all this money out of thin air, and that's inflationary. So I just want you to think about this very logically at the most basic level. Think about it like this. How much more in debt is the US government going to go into this year? It's going to be about $2 trillion because the government's going to overspend by $2 trillion, so they have to add on $2 trillion of debt, right? And where is that $2 trillion going to come from? It's going to come from the Federal Reserve. They're going to print that money out of thin air. So if you just think about this logically, if you continue to just put $2 trillion into the economy every year, that's a good year, then what do you think that's going to do to the economy? It's going to cause massive inflation, and it's going to worsen. The problem with inflation is that it worsens wealth inequality. The rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. And I'm talking about the Federal Reserve printing money again, and you know that's going to happen because they're already talking about ending QT and doing QE again, turning the money printers back on. And I want you to keep in mind that a $2 trillion deficit would be considered a good year, because with a recession, it would be much worse than $2 trillion. So this is the reason why the US government cannot afford to have a recession. And that's why the word recession is treated like blasphemy by the politicians and the Federal Reserve, because they know the situation. Because if there's a recession, the debt would spiral out of control. If there's a recession, the US government would add 4 trillion, 5 trillion in debt in 1 year, and we're talking easy. Because if you think about it, it's very straightforward. When there's a recession, unemployment is higher and less people are working. When you have less people working and people making less money, then they're going to pay less in federal income taxes, well, in taxes in general. So that's less tax revenue for the government. Also, what's going to happen? The stock market's going to do bad, or it's going to do worse. That's going to mean less capital gains tax for the government. So essentially, tax collections would go down hard. We're talking about $1 trillion easy. You can fact check me on that. And then the government, on the other side of the equation, would have to spend more money to prop up the economy. You saw last time, stimulus checks to tax credits to whatever incentives to keep the economy going, to prevent a deeper recession. So what does this mean? That means less income for the government, less tax collections, and the government has to spend more money. So that's going to equal bigger deficits. So that's why we cannot afford a recession. Otherwise, this whole thing is going to unravel even more quickly.
This is
and the worst
insane.
case scenario is that the whole system just falls apart.
Now listen to his prediction. I know there's an ad right now. It's almost over. Don't worry. Now he has a prediction for 2020,
So this
the
whole
decade,
system
and
is
next decade.
based on faith and people continuing to participate in the system. If enough credibility is lost in the US dollar and the whole system, then this whole thing falls apart. But that I want to be clear about this. The loss of credibility, it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not like a light switch, on off. Now, I want to summarize for you this whole process of how faith gets lost in the system and the whole system falls apart. If more and more people, institutions, countries lose faith in the system, so this is what's going to happen. So let's just say that the US government wants to borrow money from you. Then you're going to ask the government to pay you interest. Let's just say 4% a year. Like if you want to borrow money from me, then you have to compensate me. I want 4% interest. That's what you're going to say, okay? But if people start to lose faith in the system. People will say, well, the US government's looking more risky. So in that case, instead of asking for 4% interest, because it's more risky, you're going to want 5, 6, 7%, 8% interest to be compensated for that elevated risk. And then the interest payments will become unsustainable for the US government, and then more money is going to have to be printed, and then inflation goes up to 10%, 15%. And then when that happens, it just spirals out of control because investors are going to then say, well, inflation's at 10, 15%, then I need to be compensated interest of 20%. And it's like a death spiral. So this is how the whole thing unravels. Penn Wharton is saying that the U.S. debt will become unsustainable and a default will be unavoidable. They're saying that that's going to happen within 20 years. Jamie Dimon, CEO JP Morgan Chase, said Washington faces a global market rebellion over record U.S. debt. Dimon says that this debt spiral is the most predictable crisis that we've ever had. But I want to end with good news.
There we go. Look at the good news. This
This
is
is
the good
actually a
news.
very positive message. The good news is that we're going to be okay for the rest of this decade. I don't see a system failure happening this decade in the 20s.
We got 6 years.
So we have time. I'm just trying to be as positive and optimistic about this as possible. So isn't that great news? I think it's great news. Well, that's the status update. The politicians are leading us off a cliff. We're at 34 trillion in debt. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please subscribe. I thank you for this.
They're leading us off a cliff. I think he couldn't have put it in any better terms. So if you go back to my videos, I recommend you watch this video, what Jamie Dimon said. He's trying to deviate attention away from crypto. That's what the bank, they know what's ahead. So they're loading up on crypto. Will crypto save the economy? Or will crypto be the replacement of whatever the economy will have left? Anyways, comment down below. What cryptos are you buying? You guys know what I'm buying. This is what I'm buying. The U.S. economy is obviously unsalvageable, according to what he's saying. At least that's what I understand. And we have just maybe a decade or two, tops. I don't know. What do you guys think? What's your plan B? Because this means pensions, 401ks, everyone's just going to lose it all. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. This is Safe Investor G, HRSM Saucy Warrior. Like and subscribe, and stay saucy.